In my third year as a Taoist priest live streamer on Mount Mao, I was still mistaken by netizens as a money-grabbing charlatan, until one dark and stormy night, that woman entered my livestream room. She asked me, "Can the dead come back to life?" I originally thought it was just a joke. I don't know how I ended up on the mountain, and became a Taoist priest under my master in a confused state. He always said my blood was different from others, capable of exorcism and suppressing demonic tendencies. After 5 years of learning on the mountain, my master said I was qualified to leave, so I descended from the mountain and became an online streamer helping people with divination and fortune telling. However, in this era that advocates science, everyone treated me as a fraud. For 3 years of broadcasting, I was cursed at every day. Today, I habitually started my stream on time, and as usual, the number of viewers in the chat was only a few dozen. I knew these people were here to insult me. Charlatan, help me pick lottery numbers for this round. Charlatan, tell me which stocks will rise tomorrow. For such topics, I usually ignored them. Master, I have a question, can you help me? Because accustomed to frivolous comments, the suddenly serious comment caught my attention. Little girl, what's your question? I casually asked, but the question posed by little girl caused an uproar in the chat. Can dead people come back to life? I asked her why she asked such a question. She said it was just out of curiosity. The chat started insulting me again, saying I couldn't answer such a question, completely disregarding my feelings. Who says dead people can't come back to life? Little girl, half believing, asked. I don't believe it, doubting me. My damn competitive spirit was ignited. I had to show these ordinary people the true skills of Taoism according to medical science. When a person dies, it's called brain death, and thoughts have ceased. Over time, the body starts to decay. However, in Taoist arts, there's a forbidden technique called corpse preservation. By using specific tools and applying the right spells at specific times, a corpse can be turned into an unconscious living dead, preventing decay. She asked how to bring the dead back to life, not about your corpse preservation. Others in the chat were mocking me, but little girl quietly asked, what tools are used? What are the spells? Without much thought, I told her, during the corpse preservation ritual, no living being should be present, especially black cats must not touch the corpse, or else the body will turn into a zombie. What happens then? Little girl asked. It would be troublesome. I won't discuss it here to avoid scaring you all. The chat didn't believe a word I said. I, as a disciple of Taoism, burned the bird I used for the demonstration after the stream. After this, my popularity and income skyrocketed, and many companies and advertisers approached me for collaboration, all thanks to little girl and her topic. Just as I was about to start the stream again, she appeared after being absent for several days, and sent me a connection request. In the camera, little girl, around 30, looked delicate and beautiful, but with dark circles under her eyes, and her appearance was somewhat haggard. Most importantly, I noticed a dark mark on her forehead, a sign of a blood-related calamity. I greeted her, but she didn't speak for a long time. I directly asked her if she had encountered any trouble recently. She said her dog had recently died of illness and she wanted to use the method I mentioned last time to bring it back to life. I clearly told her it couldn't be done, as a small mistake could lead to unimaginable consequences. She cried, saying she loved the dog so much that she couldn't live without it. She just wanted the dog to accompany her. I sympathized with her, but it was a matter of principle. What I could do, and whether I should do it were two different matters. She apologized to me, saying she had been in a bad mood since the dog's death. You mentioned last time that if a black cat touches the corpse, it turns into a zombie. What would happen then? Suddenly, she asked the question I didn't finish last time, perhaps out of sympathy for her. I told her that zombies were different from the usual living dead. They had no consciousness but moved erratically and were bloodthirsty. They would bite upon seeing living beings, and they needed to drink blood to calm their restlessness. If this habit formed, their demand for blood would increase day by day, eventually turning them into monsters that bit anyone they saw. For this reason, corpse preservation was classified as a forbidden technique. Unless absolutely necessary, I wouldn't use it easily. The bird I used for the demonstration was burned after the stream. After listening to me, she remained silent for a long time. It seemed I had disappointed her. Just as I was about to change the topic, I noticed a black shadow suddenly appearing behind her. Before I could see the appearance clearly, the connection with little girl was lost. The hasty disconnection made me feel like something had happened on her end. In the moment the connection was lost, the shadow was already behind her. Moreover, I vaguely saw that the person had iron chains tied around them. What kind of person needs to be bound by iron chains? My first thought was mentally ill patients. Those mentally unstable individuals, often prone to harming others, were often confined or restrained by their families. So, little girl, at such a young age, bore such a heavy burden. No wonder her mental state was so poor. It seemed her blackened forehead was a sign of the calamity caused by the mentally ill person in her family. The live stream continued for 2 hours. After the broadcast, My friend Luo Hansen came over with a bag of beer. Anything interesting happening lately? He asked. This guy became my guide in online streaming after descending from the mountain, lost and unsure of what to do. I became an online streamer under his guidance. He is now my agent, arranging various business collaborations for me. Where to go and what to do are all arranged by him. Haven't had anything new and exciting recently? He asked me. This guy has been interested in all sorts of strange things ever since he found out I am a Taoist priest. I replied, no. He took a disappointed sip of his drink and said, our popularity has been declining these days. We need to think of something exciting to do. Like what? For example, ghost hunting for people. The last live stream of catching ghosts in the deep mountains had a good effect. Where are there so many ghosts to catch? Whether there are ghosts or not, isn't it up to us to decide? He smiled, and I knew he was up to something. He never believed in ghosts and gods. He always thought that my success as a streamer was purely due to luck. After all, in this day and age, streamers rely on gimmicks to become popular, so he always tried to persuade me to do some supernatural things to attract attention. I was a bit angry and didn't want to talk to him. But then I noticed something strange. He had an ominous aura. Normal people don't have an ominous aura. If they do, it means they've indirectly or directly encountered something unclean. The color of the ominous aura gradually deepened from red to black. The deeper the color, the more powerful the encountered entity. The ominous aura on Luo Hansen was deep red, indicating contact with something unclean. Have you encountered any strange people or strange things recently? I asked him. No. He shook his head, lay down on the spot, looking tired. These days, the people living above my apartment seem to be going crazy. They keep making noise all day long, like crying and howling, making it hard for me to sleep. Haven't you complained? How could I not? Complaints are useless. It turns out there's a mentally ill person in their house. Mentally ill? Isn't that the same as little girl's situation? Luo Hansen told me that the person living above him was a tenant who had been behaving normally before. There was no mention of mental illness, but recently, for some reason, they started making strange noises. Many people in the neighborhood went to check, and the police were even called. However, after the police arrived, they reported that there was a mentally ill person inside, and, due to a tendency for violence, they were confined. People with a violent tendency and mental illness are indeed very dangerous. They should be sent to a mental hospital. I couldn't stand the noise that night, so I went to talk to them. Later, the girl kept apologizing to me, and even compensated me with money when I was leaving. I heard the sound of iron chains. I guess the girl tied someone up with iron chains. It's quite pitiful when you think about it. A girl. Is there a mentally ill person in her house too? This is too coincidental, right? Could it be that the person living above Luo Hansen is little girl? What does the girl look like? Luo Hansen hadn't seen the girl. She kept hiding behind the door when he visited, seemingly afraid of strangers. I pondered, it should be just a coincidence, but Luo Hansen told me some information. When he visited, he smelled a strong fishy odor from the girl. Because he liked to eat fish since childhood, he was particularly sensitive to the smell, but he said that the smell didn't seem like the typical fishy smell. He couldn't describe what it smelled like. Coincidences happen every day in the world, and I didn't think too much about it. However, 2 days later, when I was having dinner, a news article on my phone startled me. All the pet dogs and cats in a certain neighborhood died overnight. The police have intervened in the investigation, suspecting poisoning. The specific details are still under investigation. Several dogs died. What's so surprising? Aren't those antisocial people often doing such things? I opened my live stream as usual. Almost the moment I went online, little girl sent a connection request again. When she appeared on the screen again, I noticed that her mental state was worse than last time. She sat in front of the camera, fidgeting. It was midsummer, yet she was wearing long sleeves. Could it be that the air conditioning in her house was too cold? She seemed very interested in the topic of the living dead, and kept asking me questions about them. When she got excited, her movements became a bit exaggerated. I suddenly noticed scars on her arms, not just one place. They looked like cuts in some areas, scratches in others, and bites in yet others. Did you get hurt? Little girl quickly pulled her sleeves down and explained, accidental. If, what? It's nothing. I need to go out for a moment. Thank you. Let's chat next time. She hastily disconnected. Luo Hansen came in and said, something strange happened in our neighborhood last night. Luo Hansen said that last night, many pet cats and dogs in their neighborhood died, and those cats and dogs were bitten to death. I casually said, probably someone in your neighborhood is keeping some large dogs, right? Luo Hansen shook his head, whispered, and said it wasn't large dogs that bit them, but people. I was shocked and, after pressing for more information, learned from Luo Hansen that after the incident last night, people in the neighborhood reported to the police. When the police arrived, they were also shocked by the gruesome scene. All the cats and dogs were bitten beyond recognition, and the person who bit them seemed like a monster. To prevent panic, the police immediately sealed off the information on the scene, since Luo Hansen happened to be there at the time. He witnessed the tragic state of those cats and dogs and knew the truth. Unfortunately, there's no surveillance in the neighborhood. We don't know who did it, Luo Hansen said. The more I listened, the more puzzled I became. I pointed to the news on my phone and found out that the news was about their neighborhood. Suddenly, I had an ominous premonition. A normal person couldn't do such a thing unless it's a zombie. I was startled. Last time, when Luo Hansen mentioned the person living upstairs, I thought it was a coincidence with little girl, but now, with little girl having scars on her hands, Luo Hansen's neighborhood animals being bitten to death, and the news on my phone, all signs were telling me that there might be zombies in Luo Hansen's neighborhood, and it was very likely little girl was involved. I immediately took out my phone, found the screenshot of my connection with little girl, and asked, is the girl living upstairs her? Yes, it's her. Luo Hansen's answer shocked me. Little girl was right there in the local area, and she happened to live upstairs from Luo Hansen. I finally understood what the cries he heard were about and why the animals in his neighborhood died overnight. Also, the smell on little girl's hands probably came from buying live animals from the market and having them bitten to death by the zombie. When I told Luo Hansen the truth, he was dumbfounded. Little girl was keeping a zombie because zombies crave blood, and she didn't provide live blood. The zombie kept making noise. When Luo Hansen went to visit, the smell was probably from little girl buying live animals from the market, which were then bitten to death by the zombie. When the police came, little girl locked the zombie in the room and chained it. The police naturally assumed it was a mentally ill person. As for the deaths of cats and dogs in the neighborhood, it was easier to explain. It seems like the zombie accidentally got out. Good lord, how terrifying. What if it encounters people? I told him with lingering fear that if it encountered people, it would also bite them to death. But why would that girl practice zombie art? Did you teach her? How could I have taught her? Even if I did, she wouldn't be able to master such complex spells. That was also the reason I couldn't understand. If little girl really had a zombie, how did she manage it? Back then, it took me half a month to learn the spell for corpse cultivation. The little girl couldn't have learned it with just one explanation from me, right? What kind of extraordinary talent does she possess? I deeply regretted revealing corpse cultivation for the sake of fame, but it's too late now. If we don't handle the zombie promptly, the consequences will be unimaginable. I immediately asked Luo Hansen to take me to their neighborhood. The moment I saw their neighborhood, I was shocked. Even though it was daytime, an invisible miasma shrouded the entire neighborhood, forming a massive black vortex hovering in the air. Such a vast miasma indicated the formidable nature of the zombies within. Which floor does she live on? I asked. 602, Luo Hansen replied with a hint of fear. After bringing me to the building, I climbed the stairs alone. The entire staircase exuded a chilling and terrifying atmosphere. Even I felt a shiver down my spine in the eerie silence. Standing in front of 602, I could distinctly sense the miasma seeping out through the door crack. At that moment, I was certain there was a zombie inside. I knocked on the door. Who is it? Her voice was not loud, but having recently conversed with the little girl, I immediately recognized her. Little girl, it's Chen Changsheng. She remained silent for a long time, and I was sure she guessed my purpose for coming. There's no one looking for here. She didn't open the door. Do you know what you've done? Quickly open the door, and I can still help you. Otherwise, people will die. Please leave. The little girl displayed strong resistance. At that moment, an elderly lady at the end of the corridor waved at me and called me over. Are you a relative of that little girl? The old lady looked at me curiously and shared some information about the little girl. The little girl was an orphan, and the house was left to her by her parents. She was introverted and rarely spoke to people in the neighborhood. About a year ago, she suddenly brought a boy back, a boyfriend, who had a lively and cheerful personality. Under his influence, the little girl became more outgoing, greeted neighbors, and even shared the delicious food she made with them. The old lady had tasted the dumplings she made. However, in recent months, the boyfriend hadn't visited, and the little girl became gloomy again. People in the neighborhood speculated that they might have broken up. About half a month ago, one evening, I went out to throw out the trash, and saw the boy come back with her. Shortly after they entered, I heard them arguing loudly, and the little girl seemed to be crying. Young couples quarreling was normal, so the old lady didn't think much of it at the time. After that incident, the boyfriend never appeared again, but strange cries started coming from their apartment. The police came one day, saying they had a mentally ill person locked up in their house, chained with iron chains. I guess it's the little girl's boyfriend. It's pitiful, getting a mental illness at such a young age. The little girl is even more pitiful, taking care of him day and night. I heard she even quit her job and buys a lot of live chickens and ducks from the market every day to feed him. The whole corridor is filled with the smell of blood. After hearing the old lady's account, I was convinced that the little girl turned her boyfriend into a zombie. As for what happened between them, I couldn't guess, but now she kept her boyfriend at home. To control his bloodthirsty desires, she bought live chickens and ducks every day for him to drink blood. I understood how the little girl got the scars on her hands. She must have been bitten by her boyfriend. The little girl was soft-hearted. To prevent her boyfriend from harming others, she chained him up, and, perhaps accidentally, he escaped the previous night. Be cautious, young man, the old lady said as she returned to her apartment. Armed with this information, I approached the little girl's door again and said, Little girl, I know what you've done. Quickly open the door, and I can help you. Otherwise, when you can't control him anymore, he will kill you. The little girl didn't respond. I initially planned to force my way in, but ultimately, due to my soft-heartedness, I decided to give her a night to think it over. After all, it was about her closest person. After hearing the little girl's story, Luo Hansen was also moved. I think I can understand her feelings. She must want to keep her boyfriend with her through this method, but it's not a wise move. You've never loved someone deeply. You don't know how painful it is to lose a loved one. It sounds like you've loved before. In this regard, I was indeed a blank sheet. I did love a woman deeply. I gave her everything, but she fell ill and died. I didn't expect Luo Hansen to have such a past, but life, aging, sickness, and death were part of human nature. Forcibly keeping the deceased in this world would only increase the pain for both the deceased and oneself. What do you plan to do? Luo Hansen asked. Tomorrow, I'll go again. If she still refuses to open the door, I'll break in. Is it dangerous? There was certainly danger, but as a descendant of Mao Shan, this was something I had to do. Moreover, I was the one who caused this mess. My blood can dispel evil and suppress demonic energy. You wait outside. If I haven't come out in half an hour, call the police. Don't let anything happen to me. With the plan set, the next day I returned to Luo Hansen's neighborhood. The little girl still refused to open the door. Helpless, I resorted to extreme measures and kicked the door open. The overpowering stench of decay hit me, and looking around, the floor was stained with various animal fur and dried blood. The dimly lit room added to the eerie atmosphere. The little girl, holding a kitchen knife, rushed out from the kitchen. Her hair was disheveled, and she looked extremely haggard. She seemed dazed and filled with hostility towards me. Little girl, it's me. I felt that she had gone mad because her eyes were filled with hostility. Don't come any closer. No one can take him away from me. She brandished the knife, and I tried to appease her, but I couldn't calm her emotions. Suddenly, a hoarse growl emanated from the room behind her. I was startled. It seemed the zombie was in that room. Little girl, don't persist in this delusion. He will really kill you. I approached the room without hesitation. The little girl, sensing my approach, raised the knife to attack me. She couldn't threaten me with a bare hand. I disarmed her, and she fell to the ground. What have you done? You're harming him, yourself, and others. I scolded her before moving towards the room. The little girl, in her frenzy, pounced on me from behind.